So, you know, we got the typical 4.5-inch ones that we use for some of the heavier welds. But those work great. We've used those for 25 years. Again, one of the biggest issues that I've always had with everyone is understanding that don't overwork the tool. You get a lot of people that'll just lay into a grinder and they'll just bury that grinder trying to get that weld and everything, and then it just starts crystallizing on it and it ain't cutting right. Tools are made specifically to have X amount of pressure put on them. Let the disc do its job. Let it do its job, and it should last quite a while. One of those discs easily can last one person a week, 2 weeks, depending on what they're doing. Grinding the welds, finishing on the brass. Once you got something grinded down, and I'll demonstrate here in a little bit. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with these deburring wheels. Great wheels. I'll show you the smaller version as well. Here's a smaller version. Use that for whenever you're working on, we use it on stainless steel, we use it on brass, we use it on whatever, just prior to polishing. We deal with, again, number 4 all the way to number 8 polished. So it varies. A lot has to do with the selection of the material. When you go to buying the material and all this, I purchase most of the material around here as well. I look at the project, see what kind of finish it's going to get. I'll specify whether or not it has to be true bar or whether it can be sheared edge condition. But it depends on the project. You go true bar, obviously, if everything needs to be nice and sharp, nice brackets, nice true lines, makes for a better looking product. Where architects get the designation for finishes typically comes from hardware. Yeah, most of them, it all comes from the door hardware. The problem with that is most of the time, whenever an architect specifies a finish, they've had a sample in their hand that has made it through I don't know how many hands. And they're still wanting you to try to keep up with that finish. So that's why we always produce a sample finish, have them sign it off on it. So yeah, as I mentioned to a couple of people earlier, a number 4 to one person is totally different to another person. It all depends on what they've been looking at, how they interpret it, and everything else. So it can be tricky at times. So always get a sample, produce a sample, have them sign off on it. Always.
Take pictures.
Take plenty of pictures of it. Yes, absolutely.
Submit 3 or 4 and tell them they have to return one to you so you can use it as a control sample for the shop. Right.
Yes, we do that. We typically produce at least 2, if not 3, ourselves. So yeah.
Which grit do you consider your final number 4?
I would say an 80 to a 120. And the reason I say that is because we Scotch-Brite. Everything that gets done, we have everything. As it goes through production, it gets dinged, banged, whatever. Everything gets unwrapped. We try to maintain everything wrapped up during production. But let's face it, it's not a perfect world. So everything gets unwrapped. Finishers go through it, looking at it. If there's a scratch, well, once you break that grain, you're going to notice the difference. So we just take the Scotch-Brite, whether it be the brown one, whether it be the red one, to help blend things in. Depends on how everything's looking. You got weld joints that got to be grinded up. Once you blend that in, you got to hand do stuff as well. So it just varies. It really does. So yeah, I would say we typically end it with an 80, 120, and then just do some blending in there.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, the true bar versus the sheared and edge condition. When I first started here, we did a project, and of course, at that time, I wasn't able to control what material was bought. The guy buying the material at that time was trying to save money and bought the lowest price stainless. Let me tell you something. That stainless came in here, it looked like concrete. And I had to put a number 8 on it. I grinded and grinded and grinded on that stuff just to try to make it look better, and never could get it down. Why? Because again, it's sheared and edge condition, low grade, and you wanted me to produce a number 8. It's next to impossible. What I was able to do with all the grinding and everything else, you could still see waves in it. It was just bad material, bad decision up front. Spend the extra money up front, get the better material, so that you can wind up with a better product.
Tony, does alloy play any difference? Do some of the alloys polish out better than others?
In my opinion, no, not really. But that's just, you know, we use 304, 303, 316. We've used it all.
316 we use outside.
Yeah, it's exterior and everything. Obviously the 303 is easier to machine down. I have one machinist that you'd rather have everything 303, one to rather have everything 304. That's just their preferences. Again, whatever it is that you want to produce, consider the material. Some of the sizes obviously are not available in True Bar. They just aren't. But then you got decisions to make. Do I get sheared and edge condition? Do I get something water jetted? Do I get it laser cut? Again, depends on the application of what you're doing. You got to think that out. Ultimately, think about what the product's going to look like. What do we do to try to keep the profile on this? Depending on the application of the product, interior, exterior. Interior, you try to get away with not having to weld that. Just because you're just adding time. Just think about that. Each and every joint, you can add, depending on how it is, you can add a half an hour just to finish out that one joint. The exterior, obviously you want to weld it all the way up. So there's different applications. We take and we grind them out. We take and we use the die grinder with some rotary files. Do they want the nice sharp corner? Can they live with a radius in it? Depends on what the client wants, really. So there's several different ways of doing that. Every now and that was a 36 grit. Again, depending on what the finish is going to be. I'm sorry?
I've been doing it for a while.
Okay. I gotta come and deal with this. Yep. The goal here is to try to minimize it to about this much. It's as simple as that. Yep. And just making sure that it's all blended. Remember what I said, we take all the paper off just to make sure that throughout the fabrication, something hasn't been scratched, dinged, or whatever. That's the key thing whenever you buy pre-finished material. You bought the pre-finished material to save yourself some time. You got to educate your fabricators to make sure they protect that material as much as possible. Because if your fabricators are just over there throwing it on the table and carrying or whatever, what'd you waste all that money for? Because you're going to have to go back and refinish it anyway, regardless. So that education has to be there.
So at what point are you taking the protection off? Right when it gets to finishing, or
when it gets to finishing? When it gets to the finishing,
okay.
You'll pull it back about 6-7 inches, weld it up, and just leave it like that. Try to maintain it wrapped as long as possible. And that way the finishers, all they got to do is just unwrap it and go through the whole entire thing. Okay, I've taken this one and I've hit it with a 60 grit flap wheel. Well, we roped this off because you never want to have anyone walk behind this thing. Like for company, when I first started working at, they had one just as big. We used to polish brass tubing all the time.
Hard backers on that as opposed to the buffs?
Yeah, we different applications. We'll buy different ones, but some of it, again, it varies. That's pretty hard for the most part. It's just where that thing's been on there probably.
Is that a treated buff?
No, it's that buff's been on there 6-7 years, so it's held up, you know. This part here also, you can use it on the. That's what it boils down to. No, if it's getting a lot of water jetting or laser cutting, we're not going to waste the money buying pre-finished material because it's got too much work that has to be done to it. You got the laser, it's got to be drilled and tapped or whatever. Boom, now you can put a finish on it. So. Any questions about this?
You're doing a long piece. You actually have a guy back here
No one back there.
doing everything from out here.
You can typically take a 20-foot stick, run it about 10 or 11 feet to as far as you can support it, and then ultimately you flip it around and go back the other way.
And you don't notice it. In the middle, you don't notice a change.
Again, when you do go back and do your hand blending, 20-footers, a lot of times, like I said, we'll run 20-footers. If we're short maybe 2-3 sticks or whatever or something, 9 times out of 10 it's going to get cut up into something, maybe post material or whatever. So it really doesn't matter there. If it's going to be used for the handrail and everything, well, you're still going to have to blend it in.
You blend it in, then back out, rotate.
Yeah, adjust.
And you put it all the way out before you spin it.
Yeah, you get right about here. Yep. We've
I guess it's easier. The longer it is, the easier it is.
yes, no.
4-foot piece.
Well, he's bringing me a 3 or 4 foot piece. That's what I've asked him for. We've actually, right. When I first started in the business, we did we polished. I've personally polished 8-inch round brass pipe. Now, that's a chunk of material. Well, all we can do is just grab some vice grips, clamp it onto the end, because once that sucker starts going through there, it's going to pull you. And you literally got to be leaning back, but also putting pressure on this thing to do the finish. We've also taken out these stands, and if you got to polish something round, like trash cans or whatever, we did a project one time, we're doing trash cans. Set this up with a polishing wheel, polishing compound, and just like a little table, just lean into it and spin it.
You worry about the weld joint and pull it off?
Well, I'm going to tell you what. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grind the back of this one off. Paul asked if we could do something on the stroke sander over here. I'm going to grind this down so we can go and lay it down flat on there. And let's see what the weld comes out like.
So he's not clamped down on there, he's just using the
Nope.
as a stop.
Yep. Yeah. You can mount that on an arbor like that. A little tricky. You know, when you got you may not be able to use the grinder, big grinder everywhere. Pull up one of them small buffs on the arbor, the loose buff, the white one. That's exactly what this is, except they go on a die grinder. That way you can get this rail. This rail's installed like that. Well, you're going to try your best to get the big grinder in there. Well, I'm going to be fighting it. Let me get the die grinder. Let me work that die grinder inside here. I'll work all this out first. Then I'll bring my big grinder and I'll just work this and blend it in.
Probably don't even need the white on that, do you?
No, this is, yeah.
So these guys typically run around 3,800 RPMs. And that's a 7,000 RPM. You're saying you can use either.
It's just different applications. I mean, I've never really truthfully given it much thought. It just comes natural. It just, whatever flows, whatever works best.
So when you first put it on here, it wasn't quite getting to the level.
It wasn't. I was able to put more pressure over there. If you notice, I was putting more pressure.
Harder buff too.
It's a stiffer buff.
You were getting down on it.
Yeah, that one cuts better. That one you can use the cutting, more cutting and everything. Yep, there's some spots I missed.
That's a treated buff, right? They dip in some sort of solution.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's a stiffer woven.
Well, yeah, I think they call those airways. They put that in there and they dip it in some sort of solution to give it that stiff, that rigidity. Yeah. So it's pretty.
Okay, this is it's a paper that you can use. There's the 80 grit, 60, 40 grit. Then a wider piece, something like that, is just absolutely beautiful for.
Right, which is very, very challenging to say the least, because obviously the sheets come in already factory run and everything else, and those. I mean, let's face it, it's a challenge to try to match up that stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you sometimes have to because they get
Right.
messed up. So I'm going to knock this down a little bit. So if you're in the shop, you know, there's all kinds of regular Come on. Then they also have things for, like, when this is already in the field and all welded, you've got a situation where you can't slip it over the edge. They have this. So all you have to do is like this.
I wanted to see what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and grind down this weld, and then just put a brush finish, and then probably seems to work good. It's a couple of steps. What I'll do is I'll sand it down with some of this first, and then come back and hit it with the gray wheel. Using a cut wheel to reshape this line in here. Then from there, taking that small 3-inch gray wheel, like the big one, then running it along that edge.
Really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
But
A lot easier to finish it out though.
oh yeah, yeah. There's a couple of applications on different jobs that we've done with the silver solder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just it only makes sense. But yeah, we didn't. Man, I don't remember the last time we even sold any molded camp.
That's how we did with them.
Yeah, that was probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So it just doesn't come out. I mean, in the commercial end, it's not there.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Residential, let's face it, there's not that many big homes being built that'll absorb the cost of something of that. So.